Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of episode 1, which is power supply. In this part, we're going to talk about what are power supplies, how should we choose the right power supply for our computer, and we're talking about the connectors, and we're going to talk about how we can troubleshoot our power supply in case it failed. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is power supply and what does it do. The first and most important thing is to know that the outlet that we are using is giving us an AC current, an alternating current, which is called AC, and that means that your current will go back and forth. And that is not something that you want to use for your computer because it's not useful for your component, and the component of the computer do not use the AC power. So you need to have a system, or you need to have a device that convert this AC to a direct current, which is called DC, and DC is the one that your component, the component of your computer need. So power supply pretty much is a converter. It converts the AC to DC. And another thing, the most important thing that it does is that it gives power, the right amount of power in the right form to different components of your computer. So it is very important to have the right power supply for your computer because there are different wattage rating for power supplies based on what type of computer you're going to build or what type of computer you bought and you want to replace your power supply. So that power that goes to each component of your computer is called wattage, and it is calculated in wattage, and you want to watch for the wattage rating when you're buying a power supply. Another thing is each one of these connectors have a specific voltage depending on the component's need. So now how can you measure or calculate to see how much wattage your computer needs? One of the easiest way to do that is to go and search in Google for the power supply calculator, or you can go to the Cooler Master website, and in the section of their power supply calculator, another one is Outer Vision that have the power supply calculator as well. So you can easily just go to these website and then enter the information about your computer, for example, your CPU, your graphic card, and anything that you had used in your computer, and it will give you the rating of what wattage you need for your computer. And in case you want to just calculate it by yourself and you don't want to use any of the website or anything, it's always good to add a little bit more wattage on top of what you get from your component, and I will tell you the reason. First of all, the first reason is that rating might not be exactly accurate, and if you're going exactly with what you need, you might have some problem. You might not be giving enough power to each part of your component, because the rating can be differ a little bit. And there is another reason which is very important, is that as you can see here, we're talking about the power supply efficiency. If you're using a power supply which is exactly the same rating as your as what your computer needs, that means you're always running at 100% load. So when you're running at 100% load, your efficiency, as you can see, is a little bit lower. So it's 82%, 85%, 87%. And then sometimes people think, okay, so I'm going to go way over what I need. So when you're going way over what you need, then you will go to the lower part of the loading, which is 20%. And again, your efficiency will be very low. So you want to avoid getting a too good power supply for your system, or exactly at the same amount that your power supply needs, because you don't want it to fail. and you want to be somewhere around 80 to 90%. That would be an ideal. And then another thing that you notice here is that there are some other type of ratings here. For example, you have the bronze, and you have silver, you have gold, and there are some other ones, platinum and titanium, which is going after this. And as you can see, when we're going more toward gold or platinum, the efficiency will go higher, 85%, 88%, 90%. So what actually this efficiency means is that this is the amount of power you're getting, and the rest of it will be turned into heat, which is not useful for your computer. It's actually bad for your computer. So you always want to have a very good efficiency. And another thing that is not good is that you're actually paying for that power that turns into heat. So your bill, it's going to be higher as well as your computer won't be performing at its best. So based on these things, the wattage that your computer need, the component of your computer need, and based on this rating, efficiency rating, you want to figure out what is the best power supply for you. And after that, let's talk about the types of power supplies. There are two main types of power supply. One of them is non-modular power supply, and the other one is the modular power supply. So this is our non-modular power supply, and this is our modular power supply. So the difference between these two is that, as you can see, non-modular, all of your connectors, all of your cables are already attached to your power supply, and you're not able to change them in case you want to upgrade your system, or if one of these fails, or if you don't have enough of them, you won't be able to add anything on top of the cables and connectors that you have. And on the other hand, you're not always going to use all of these cables, so some of these cables are just going to hang around inside of your computer and give it a messy look. So that's one of the reasons that you kind of want to avoid, in my opinion. You want to avoid non-modular power supply. But if you're thinking about just getting a power supply and just connect it to your computer and not touch it ever again, then this might be a very good choice. And another reason that you want to avoid this is that in case one of these, for example, cut off, or for some reason one of these cables failed, you're not able to replace them, so you need to kind of replace the whole power supply, which is not very good. It's going to be a little bit of waste of money. So for the modular power supply, you don't need to connect, none of the wires are actually connected on these power supply, as you can see. And what you can do is you can choose which ones you're going to be using and how many of each you're going to be using, and you can add the right amount of the cables, so your computer won't look as messy, inside of it won't look as messy, and in case something failed, you can just take it out and replace it with a new one. So then here we need to learn about the different type of connectors and cables and see what each one of them do. So the first type of connector that we're going to be using is the motherboard connector. The motherboard connector is the biggest connector in your power supply, and it has 24 pins altogether, and but 4 of these pins can be detached. So this is 20 pin, this is 4 pin. So you can detach these 4 pin from your 20 pins, and the reason for that is some of the motherboards, and mostly the old motherboards, have used 20 pins. So this way you're supporting both type of the motherboard in case you want to use a 20 pin motherboard. So yeah, this is pretty much the connector for the motherboard that you're going to be connected, and normally it is on the right side of your power on your motherboard, but it still depends on what type of design of motherboard you're getting. And then after, we're talking about the CPU connector. CPU connector is providing the power for your CPU. Again, like your motherboard, it has it has two parts. You can separate the parts from each other. So it has two 4-pin connector, or overall it has 8-pin. It is an 8-pin connector. It is called a CPU connector, but it is still going on your motherboard because your CPU is in your motherboard. And then in the lecture that we're talking about the motherboard, I'm going to talk about where each one of these connectors go. But for now, just know that this 8-pin connector is a CPU connector. And then after that, we're going to another connector, which is the Peripheral Connector. There are two types of Peripheral Connectors. One of them is Molex and the other one is SATA. Molex is the older version and it is not as widely used anymore. They're mostly SATA that we're using now. And what they do, the Peripheral Connectors, they're connecting mostly hard drives in your computer, but if you have optical drive in your computer, you can connect them with these connectors as well. And I believe there are some fans that they are connected with the Peripheral Connector as well. And another interesting thing about this SATA connector is that this is multiple connector. So you can connect 4 hard drives with just one connector, so it will save lots of space and it is neater. Another thing you want to know about these connectors is that these connectors are in series, and that S is the stand for series. And what else about it? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and this SATA connector, which is a power supply connector, it is different from the SATA connector, which is for data transfer that we're going to talk about later. So those two are different. And then the other one that we're going to talk about is the PCIe connectors, or PCI Express connector. This connector is used for graphic cards, Yes, it's used for graphic cards or graphic drives, and they have 6 pins, and 2 of them can be detached. So they are 8 pins in general, but you can use it for 6 pins graphic cards as well. And so these are all the connectors that you're going to use. I mean, normally these are all the connectors that you're going to be using in your power supply. And now we're going to learn about how to troubleshoot your power supply if it wasn't working correctly. You want to figure out where the problem is and what is not working. So one of the ways to do that is to always have access to the pinout. You can just easily search it on Google. For example, your Peripheral Connector, you search for Molex connectors and anything like that to see the pinout. So the pinout is pretty much says how much voltage each one of these are giving out and which ones are common. So these are your common, these are your grounds, and then you have the 5-volt DC that comes out from your pin 4, and you have 12-volt DC that comes out from your pin 1. Another way to see it is with the color. So you have the yellow color as pin 1 and 12-volt. So what you can do is you can use your, if you think that one of them is failing, you can use your DMM, and you can measure what voltage you're getting from each one of the pins and see if they are at the actual voltage. And if yes, then you're going forward to look for other part of the problem. But pretty much this is the first step that you want to do when you want to troubleshoot your power supply to see if all the connectors work or not. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you in the next video. Bye.